Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Abington School Committee meeting. Tonight is Tuesday, December 7th. If I could all ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. After the pledge, I'm going to ask everyone for a moment of silence to remember and honor the 2,403 Americans killed at Pearl Harbor on this day in 1941. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. At this time, we will open the floor to a hearing of visitors. Do we have anyone that would like to speak? Okay. Closing the hearing of visitors, we will now move on to the reading approval of records for the October 26, 2021 minutes. If someone would like to make a motion to approve.
I can make that motion.
Okay. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So next we have the report of from the Director of Student Services with the additional homeschool requests. Oh. Did I miss something? Oh. Sorry. Let's hold off on that if you don't mind. Can we get to the report of the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment? And that is from Dr. Sherry Fedorowicz. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2020-2021 Abington Public Schools MCAS report. We're going to be starting the report with elementary in all subjects, followed by high school science, ELA, and then math. And just as a reminder, we use the state benchmark. The state is our benchmark for our data. On the second slide. First, I'm going to go over the ELA scores. Grade 3 through 6 averaged almost 11% above the state average last year. Grade 3 was 13% above state average. Grade 4 was 9%. Grade 5, 8%. And grade 6 was 12% above the state average.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Yes.
If anybody needs a packet, it's not on screen tonight as normal, so if anyone needs a packet, they are up there. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay, thanks. Okay, moving on to slide 3, elementary ELA growth. Growth scores are available for elementary in grades 5 and 6 only this year, just due to the lapse in the MCAS for 2020, the year before. Usually we also have grade 4, but we don't have that data this year. Grades 5 and 6 performed in the higher growth and higher achievement quadrant, which is the top right. Grade 5's SGP, or student growth percentile, was 3.6 above the state average, and grade 6's was 2.4 above the state average. Slide number 4. Areas of strength and improvements for elementary ELA. So we use a workshop model structure, which is a comprehensive literacy framework that includes explicit phonics and phonemic awareness components. We also do a lot of independent reading stamina, which has the most significant impact on student success in reading. We continue to work toward high growth and high achievement on MCAS and continue to progress and persevere through pandemic. In terms of recommendations, we are continuing professional development and training in the workshop model structure to focus on student conferencing and to continue to structure reading to prioritize differentiation, rigor, and student engagement. We also continue to improve independent reading stamina, and we also are enhancing our phonics and phonemic awareness instruction. Any questions before I move on to math, as we move off of ELA? Okay, great. Slide 5. Elementary school math MCAS. So next we're going to look at the MCAS scores in math. Grade 3 was 29% above the state average. Grade 4 was 3% below the state average. Grade 5 was 6% above the state average, and grade 6 was 4% above the state average. Slide 6 shows us the growth scores, and again, they're available for grades 5 and 6 this year, not grade 4 because of the pandemic last year. Grade 5 and 6 performed in the lower growth, higher quadrant. Grades 5 and 6 student growth percentile were approximately 2% below the state average in growth. Slide 7. Our areas of strength and improvement. We last year updated our Envisions program, which is now Envisions 2020. It is also their most updated version. We continue to work toward the independence, the rigor, and the student engagement, and look toward differentiated instruction and individualized instruction. And again, continued progression and perseverance through the pandemic last year and again this year. Recommendations: continued targeted and tiered math-based instruction, looking to utilize more math overlap in STEAM in our upper elementary, enhance student engagement and rigor through small groups, independent work to help improve and work toward individualized instruction and differentiated instruction. And we're going to be working with professional development in the buildings to enhance math mindset and capacity. Any questions in elementary math before I move on to science?
I
Yes.
do have a question regarding, especially looking at the numbers grades 3 to 4. Do you happen to know offhand, is the math that's being tested on MCAS at the elementary levels, is there a difference from grade level to grade level as far as how much of it is basic computation versus how much of it is language-based mathematical questions?
I can look into that for you a little bit more, but it depends year to year. They change the questions every year, and this past year was a little bit different than what it has been in the past, but I can check that out for you.
Thank you.
I know they trimmed it down substantially so kids didn't spend as much time on it, so.
Exactly. So it was language-based versus computation?
Correct,
Okay.
thank you.
We all knew that wasn't going to work anyway, with the writing out the answers and everything forever. That was way too much work. Glad they finally are learning. Not they are teachers, but the state.
Dr. Fedorowicz,
Yes.
when is the professional development schedule that you talked about for the math mindset and capacity?
So our first one is going to be in January
Okay.
for our half professional development day, and then we're going to work with teachers coaching and additional math mindset and capacity throughout the spring semester and going into next year,
Okay.
and the following year. So it's both short and long term.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Can I ask a quick question about the continued progression through pandemic? Like, is that accelerated progression or is it just continued?
I think it's a couple things. It's one, the state came out with, I'm going to use the word kind of like power standards or specific standards last year through the pandemic for mastery. And this speaks a lot to, in terms of our teachers and administrators, I want to say especially teachers, just, going through last year, we went through the hybrid model, some remote, coming back in person. And so I think really it's speaking to the different models that we had to go through and how the teachers were able to work with students and also the students as well, just to push through the pandemic, meet the learning needs.
So do you think that they lost any, good amount of time, like really learning something? Some of these kids don't learn as fast as others. So are they
do we see learning
behind now
loss?
or, I'm sorry?
Learning loss?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then DESI is asking administration and teachers to accelerate this year as well, or was it just last year?
It's not accelerate, it's more
Focus.
filling in the gaps and focusing on where the gaps have been so that you don't have, say, a fifth grade teacher going back and teaching fourth grade, but more of a case of looking at doing some formative assessments, like, okay, where are some of our gaps in this particular unit, say fractions.
Yeah.
We might have a gap in some fractions, and here's how we're going to help to build those skills and then be able to move forward with the grade 5 curriculum. That was just an example.
So do you think that they got rid of, all the writing that went with, Common Core basically introduced a lot of the writing with math before, and it was only, you could answer a question in 2 steps, and then it went to 7 steps, and then you had to, write the reason why in a whole big paragraph.
In the MCAS.
No, in just regular everyday life. So do you think, did that stop or subside because of the pandemic, or was that already in the works?
Stopping the writing, like in word problems and
Yeah,
answering.
you said that when she asked like how it's been going, and you said that they're not as, I don't know, as, they don't make you do as much of it, you know what I mean, and as long. So was that happening before the pandemic, or did the pandemic help stop that?
I think it's a little bit of a loaded question, and I'll answer it best I can. So, first of all, the frameworks, we did more of a mastery set of frameworks to focus on. In terms of what our curriculum covered, for that, we still were able to continue focusing on those standards and using the curriculum that we have. So if there were areas of instruction that maybe we felt that we needed to back off of a little bit or add a little bit more of, whether it was more computation to get through or more writing, it varies depending on grade level and depending on subject area. So it's hard to say what the state is going to do going forward, but from what I understand, it's going to maintain pre-pandemic. We're going to get back to where we were.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, very
Okay.
much so. Thank you.
Yep.
And definitely all kids lost and have been losing during the pandemic in terms of where they would have been
Of course.
if there wasn't a pandemic.
Yes, we do see that.
So,
But can we also point out that this chart still screams to the strength of the teachers who just worked so hard and thought out of the box and created, literally out of thin air, ways to engage kids from the other side of a computer screen at a moment's notice.
And I know how you feel about this. Also, our families who are working with their kids. And
Yep.
so, yeah, these charts look very different depending on what community you're in.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to say this, but if we were going to have a pandemic, having it just after we built a new building and we did 2 years of professional development on using computers, and then we rolled out a one-to-one initiative for that building gave us the materials to limp along through it. I don't want to make it sound like, so if we were going to have it, that was the time to have it, to go through this misery
Right.
with the technology rollout that we had. And I think that's helped us a lot. So, just my
And
opinion.
I think that is what I wanted to get at with the last bullet under strengths, is the continued progression and perseverance of just everybody, just all the changes and the flexibility and being able to do the great job that everybody does and move forward. So, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I ask you
I'm
one-
sorry.
Yes.
No, that's my fault. Can I ask you one more? I think I guess I'm more asking opinion than anything else. The grade 3 math clearly has a jump higher than the state more than anything else. So is there any particular, is anything you can opine on what may be the cause of that great result compared to everything else kind of being right along the state, a little bit better, but that one absolutely jumps out.
It's absolutely definitive. We don't have the specific item analysis this year, because I would love to take a look at that and do the analysis on that. We have been working a lot, again, with math and math mindset, so I think there's progress there. And I also think that with the state having the reduced number of questions too. I think it's just kind of a lot of parts coming together
Okay.
as well. And plus they do a great job.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to brag a little
No,
bit too,
I
so.
agree.
But Chris, that's precisely why I asked the question I did, because I have the same question you did. What was I mean, our third grade teachers are amazing, yes.
Yes, they are.
But I was also wondering if there was another factor that led to, that would also allow us to look at some of these other scores and go, okay, there's a reason for the disparity here, more so than just
Correct.
what we see on paper.
Yep. And again, some of the data the state gave us this year that they usually give us every year, they didn't provide.
Mhm.
So that makes it a little bit more challenging and a little frustrating.
Thank
but-
you, though, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, I'm going to move on to slide number 8, science. And I'm going to cover grade 5, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tom Kitterick, who's our new science department head, and he's going to go over grades 8 and high school. And just as a refresher, you're not going to see growth scores for science because there's a gap between grades. They don't do the growth scores. It's just not a continuously tested subject. In grade 5, our students scored 10% above the state average in science. And this is where I end my presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who's going to fill you in on grades 8 and high school.
Thank you. Hi, Tom. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Kitterick. I'm the head of the science department for 7 through 8, and I'm going to talk to you about slide 8 and slide 9 as it relates to grade 8 and grade 10. On slide 8, as we can see, relative to the state, we were -4 at the grade 8 level, and we were +3 at the high school level. Relative to the high school, those scores will be the last scores that we do relative to the legacy testing with MCAS. So what that means is the last few years, all of the other subject matters moved to computer-based testing. Science has kind of lagged behind. What that has meant for the science department is that we've had to kind of bridge between the 2006 curriculum and the 2016 state curriculum standards. So this will be the scores that we have right now, the last of the legacy scores. I'm going to move on to slide number 9. So as we talk about strengths, unfortunately with grade 8 -4, it was kind of a tough act to follow because I just heard plus multi-digit numbers and what have you. And then it's like, oh crap, I'm going to come in and kind of kill that performance level. But the data hasn't been provided by the state in order for me to kind of break down and take a look at why we saw a degradation, besides the easy answer of blaming it on the pandemic. One of the thoughts that we have is that the difference in the 2016 standards and the computer-based sciences is that some of the questioning is allowing multiple answers to be incurred. So in the legacy testing, you would have questions that would have one answer. And students, for the most part, have been trained to have one answer. With the computer-based learning and the science-based is that they could have multiple answers. And so there is some thought that some students don't appreciate that as much, and as a result of that, they're not thoroughly answering the questions. So that's kind of where we're thinking. Relative to strengths, again, I wanted to take the opportunity to basically say I'm proud of both the students and the teachers between the hybrid, the remote, the in-class learning. Everybody went through an awful lot of changes, and we were still able to be 3% higher than the state average and we were also 3% lower on failures. So that data wasn't shown on the map, but I still think that's a positive thing. The other strength that I see going forward for the science department is we did obtain the Explore Learning tool, Gizmo. We used to use Adobe Flash Lab. That kind of went obsolete and kind of left us in a little bit of a limbo. So we were able to pick up Gizmo at the high school level, I think in the early March, April timeframe. And they have some great virtual labs in there. So I see us using that as a strength in moving forward. Relative to moving forward, to understand the test data that I showed you on slide 8, on the high school science test, it's given us some areas in which we can identify some discrepancies in the answers for on the test. One of the areas that we anticipated going forward was because of the pandemic, we weren't able to cover as much as the curriculum. And one of the areas that we didn't get to was the anatomy and physiology aspects of the test. And although the data is not shared here, we were minus 3% in the state relative to the state testing in that space. And we, like I said, it was kind of a known commodity on that. So going forward, we want to dissect those numbers a little bit more. And again, try to change our curriculum to help our students improve in those particular areas. We're going to, moving forward, we hope to continue to explore and utilize Gizmo, their virtual labs, and supplement those virtual labs with hands-on opportunities. As we kind of progress through the pandemic, we're kind of a little bit like a slinky in the sense that, yeah, we can get close, no, we can't get close. So it's kind of tough to do those hands-on labs. But the Gizmos and the virtual labs have pretty much been a godsend in that software. So we're still trying to get move forward with that. And then as we move forward, we want to continue to build assessments that focus on analyzing, interpreting, and presenting scientific data that will hopefully allow the students to make those scientific connections and tie that to the vision of the graduate. So we're kind of trying to understand the vision of the graduate, moving forward, meet those requirements for the science department. Does anybody have any questions?
Always. Thanks for being here. Is, particularly at the middle school level, are people still using IXL at all within the science realm? Do you happen to know?
Off the top of my head, I don't believe they are.
Yes.
At the middle school level?
Yes, so
Okay,
we have
I've done it.
IXL, middle, high school,
For math,
yes.
for math.
But for
For the
science.
science. Yeah, for
Okay.
science,
Yes,
so that's,
Okay,
I
because
did not
I
know that.
not to rat anyone out, but I do know that there were a couple of middle school kids who were doing that prior to MCAS because they weren't quite sure they were there yet. So I just wasn't sure, are we looking at Gizmo to replace an IXL type thing, or are they used?
To be quite honest with you, that would be something I'd have to go back and talk to the staff about and see, you know, what are the pros and cons of Gizmo versus IXL and
Sure,
what's-
and I'm not trying, I
No,
know
no,
it
no,
sounds like,
that's
you know,
fine.
left field kind of question.
Sure.
Gizmo is more like a lab-based, virtual lab, hands-on, student engagement. IXL is more an adaptable, skill-based adjustment.
Right.
So there's two totally different functions.
One is a teaching function, the other as an individualized learning.
And yes,
Practice.
practicing the skills.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Then I'll turn it over to,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dr. Liz Gonzalez. I'm the Department Head of English, and I'm here to speak to you about middle school and high school English Language Arts performance. Starting on page 10, you can see that grade 7 outperformed the state in exceeding and meeting expectations by 7%. At grade 8, they exceeded the state in those same categories by 4%. And at the high school level, exceeded the state by 3% in exceeding and meeting expectations. One of the things that's not on this slide that I am so proud to tell you is that we made 2% growth from pre-pandemic, during the pandemic. And our exceeding expectations category grew from 9% in 2019 to 20% in 2021. So there was really exceptional achievement at the high school level. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the growth. On slide 11, you see the growth in grade 7 is above the growth of the state, and that's by 6%. And it is right on top of the state in grade 8, even though the number is just 1%. You can see the star right in the center of our achievement. In grade 8, you see the growth moving toward the high growth, high achievement category. And even though we exceeded the state by 5% in the mean student growth profile, our growth figure is the same as the state. So as far as strengths and improvements, I think the growth exceeding the state in all 3 grades is something to be commended, especially during a difficult time when we had students who were remote and hybrid. And I agree with Mr. Schaefer that we were certainly very well positioned, especially at grade 7, 8, and 10. Those students had had the experience to be one-on-one on computers long before, so they were probably the students who were easiest adapted to remote and hybrid instruction. The response to essay items in both content and conventions for all students in many subgroups was really exceptional. So in English language arts, there are multiple choice items, but there are still a significant number of items that require writing or word processing, typing their answers, and that was our greatest strength. For recommendations for future study, focusing on the impact of the author's craft and style as a kind of hint to reading between the lines to increase inferential reading scores is really an area that we have always needed to work on. Promoting comparison and contrast of multiple genre and texts on similar topics. Every set of items on the ELA MCAS involves reading 2 or more texts on a similar thematic topic, so that's a great strategy to echo in classroom instruction. It is possible that right before test administration, it would be good to review multiple choice strategies. One of the answers is going to be wrong, one of them is going to be good, a third one is going to be better, and the fourth answer is going to be best. So being able to distinguish between the better answer and the best answer is a strategy that would help improve our scores. Continue to build challenging text sets with multiple genres on common topics. So very often we would have a narrative in a poem, or in a nonfiction situation, there would be a chart, a photograph, and an interview. So we need to build text sets like that in our instruction. And we are going to continue to use IXL in English language arts, particularly with our English language learners and our students with disabilities, as an intervention tool. And we would see it there rather than in use for the whole class. Are there any questions on English before I turn the podium over to my colleague in math?
No.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming too. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hi, my name's Meg Doherty. I'm the department head for math, grades 7 through 12. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our MCAS scores and hopefully a little bit of understanding. In grade 7, we were 18% below the state, and our percent exceeding expectations and meeting expectations. In grade 8, we were 13% below, and in grade 10, we were 1% below. With those results, you can imagine that our growth scores are not going to be reflective of anything else. We were lower than the state in both the mean SGP as well as exceeding expectations and meeting, so both growth and achievement in grade 7 and 8. At the high school, you can see we were almost right at the state in terms of growth and achievement, so we'll be able to bring that back. In terms of strengths, at the high school, building functions and congruence was a strength at the high school. At the middle school and high school, it was such a tough year for teachers to learn how to teach math remotely. There was a learning curve for both the teachers and students in terms of just typing equations in. How do you do that with an equation editor? There were so many technical new tools for all of us to learn, that there was a little bit of learning curve. We learned a lot about technology, a lot about patience, and a lot about perseverance. Our recommendations, we have a lot. We have a lot of work to do in math. We're going to continue the work that we began in 2019 in choosing and creating curriculum that fosters independent thinking, mathematical discourse, and perseverance in problem solving. I think one of the things that happened during the pandemic is that we basically, it was difficult to get into deeper thinking and a deeper dive with math. Being a sequential subject, if a student doesn't get a topic and we move on, we've now created another gap. So when you're trying to go ahead and fill gaps, as Dr. Fedora just was talking about at the elementary school, we're trying to teach a grade 7 curriculum while also identifying the gaps in grade 6 and fixing them as we go along. Our professional development is to help and support teachers in creating a problem-based classroom where math becomes the tools to solve the problem. In other words, we need to give them an in, and not just because here's the skill that we want you to work on. We want you to have a reason to do that skill, so they feel the value in it, they feel engaged in it. We want to continue to work in identifying and closing gaps created during the pandemic, and that's going to be an ongoing process for math because it is sequential. Our gaps in grade 1 will not be filled necessarily by the end of grade 2. So the curriculum is going to be a moving target for the next few years for us. We want to create support for students who are filling the gaps at different paces, and I think that's one thing that we learned, is that the kids are in different places, and to go back and fill one student's gap isn't necessarily going to be something that another student has to have filled. Our implementation of a new curriculum that fosters perseverance and critical thinking. We are working with Dr. Fedora at the middle school in terms of creating a new curriculum and the professional development to allow for independent and critical thinking that fosters perseverance. And the time dedicated to coaching and teacher-to-teacher observations to promote discourse about best practices in teaching and learning. When teachers have a chance to see each other and talk to each other about what they're teaching and learning, so much can happen. And I get that benefit because I get to observe them and I get to steal everything from them. It's awesome, it's great. But for them to be able to see what each other are doing and have those conversations are really, really important. Questions? Yeah.
Just a comment, listening to my own students last year and this year, even though I don't teach math, all of the high school kids were saying that math for sure was the hardest to do behind a screen. And it was just really hard. They fell behind. They couldn't get that one-on-one help with their teachers, and they felt lost. So I think for sure, from anecdotal evidence and kids talking, it was really hard for them to do that behind a screen and at home with limited help.
I would 100% agree. We
Yeah.
did everything we could to reach out to them, particularly on the remote days when we had that possibility, and that worked out really well. But it was challenging with the sequential nature of it. It's just really hard.
And just checking that, just to make sure, the data for when we say the 7th grade, that is this year's current 8th graders. So these are the results.
Yes, and I don't know if it helps, but when their last MCAS that they took when they were in grade 5, they were 13% below the state.
Yeah.
So they were already behind when they began, and then you throw in a pandemic. Makes it a little bit tricky.
So that was kind of my question is, this is my first year on the school committee, so just wondering what the numbers looked like before,
Yep.
so if, the
Yeah,
7th
absolutely.
graders were at, 18 below. Last time you did this data, what were the current 7th graders at then? This comparison.
Yeah, so in 2019, when the 7th graders were in grade 5, they were 13% below the state.
Yeah.
The 8th graders were only 1% below the state.
Okay.
So that's a little bit more concerning to
Yeah.
me. And those would be our current 9th graders now.
Yeah,
The other part with grade 7 that I think is kind of interesting, and I didn't live at the middle school, but not only are they transitioning to a middle school, but now they're transitioning to all their different teachers. And they've
Yeah.
never had that, but they're doing it all remotely or hybrid. And I think it would take a little bit longer to create those relationships than they had in the past. So that's just something like when I'm thinking, why are the numbers where they're at? Yeah.
No.
So my question was kind of along those lines. You might have already answered it somewhat, and it may even involve bringing Dr. Fedorowicz in, because I was like taking the middle school as a whole, as we know it, 5
Right.
through 8, And fifth and sixth were above the state.
Exactly.
And seventh and eighth cratered below the state. The fact that whatever class it was already there at least makes some sense. And I wrote down is the fact that they're going from having two teachers, where I know there's a math class, but I know fifth and sixth grade has ACT lab period where you could meet with your math, like, you have a lot more time to meet with that teacher, where in seventh and eighth, it's one period out of, I guess I'll find out, 7, maybe, I'm gonna guess. So I don't know if that plays a part into it as well. I guess I was looking at the middle school as a whole and seeing how fifth and sixth were up, but seventh and eighth were down.
I believe, and you can answer me, but I believe that fifth and sixth have a little bit more time dedicated to actual math class.
Right, and so you have teachers that are teaching basically humanities, and then they switch for math, science, and they have the STEM course as well.
Yep.
So that's a piece of it. But
I was figuring it was having something to do with that, just like knowing that that's one building, almost, I think is where I just lumped them together kind of too, but
Yeah.
it's hard.
slightly different model, same.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard
products,
knowing, because, right, so seventh graders last year, they would have taken it the last time in fifth grade, right? Yeah,
Yeah, so 2019 fifth
okay,
grade.
yeah,
Yep.
okay.
So do you think that we should focus some extra time on our current 7th and 8th, would they be current? No, it would now be 8th and 9th graders, right? So is there any concern for those two classes?
Well, the 9th grade, we do have bridge block, so that does help
Right.
quite a bit. So it allows us to do an intervention more quickly. So particularly I have 9th graders, so if I see that a student is struggling or a lot of times it's just building up their confidence, to tell them they can do this because they're just so nervous. That's one thing I found. Anxiety in general, I think, has been bigger throughout the pandemic, but I think math anxiety has also grown. I think students may have relied a little bit on technology that helped them a little too much with the math, with their phones, and so now they're back to kind of doing it in person, and they're a little bit more nervous about it. But that bridge block really helps us to get that intervention at a more timely manner. In grades 7 and 8, it's a little bit harder to get that done. It still requires students staying after, or they also have academic support built in as well for students who are identified.
And then,
Sorry. Just to piggyback on that, I'm curious, do you see in those classes, do their classroom grades sort of correspond with the MCAS results, or is it more of like an issue with taking the test, but they're doing better in the classes? Is there
No, I
any
think-
correlation there?
No, because I think last year there was so much going on that we didn't necessarily grade in the way that we've traditionally graded. So for example, at the high school level, just to speak of that, we normally count assessments or anything that's graded as 90%. Show me what you know and are able to do is 90%. And participation, homework, all that stuff is 10%. But we felt that during the pandemic, we should really give them a lot more for participating in class and trying in class and making that effort in class. And so we made that a higher amount than we ever had in the past and lessened assessment. So I wouldn't say the grade, just to kind of ease the anxiety and to kind of get them, turn your camera on, talk to me, engage in class when they're remote. And I believe at the middle school, we did the same thing. Not quite, they already have a higher, what they call work habits percentage. But I think everybody was much more flexible than they have been in the past, which is a hard thing for math teachers sometimes.
and just, if I may, just add to that as well, the summer of 2019, we started working at the middle school with math, like super specialized hone in like math capacity, math mindset. And so we had started the work of professional development at the middle school with math, and then the pandemic hit. And I think that kind of
Throw it all out the window. Oh, put it a pause. Put it on a
put it in a
pause.
pause, and then, so we're starting that work back up again in full force. So it's definitely on our radar and has been, again, it's the perseverance through the pandemic and something that's completely sequential.
Can I ask you just a quick question? So for those for last year when they were grade 7 and 8, how were they in grades 3 and 4 and 5 taking the test? Like, was there always a gap with these two grades, or do you find it more now?
I think traditionally we always have a gap in grade 7. compared to the state, and I truly feel that that's the transition that we have in a different place than other schools have it. So a lot of schools, their middle schools will go 6 through 8. It's a kind of a strange transition in grade 7 to now we go to the 7-period schedule and kind of more to the high school. So we always see that gap there, and then they kind of build it back up in grade 8. That's what we've seen in the past. I did not dig back, but lucky for you, I am next week's special guest, next month's
awesome.
special guest at school committee. So I can absolutely follow these cohorts with that data if you would like.
Definitely, I would love to see that, and then just maybe even focus in a little bit of extra special attention. I mean, you guys already know, on these 2 grades, because I am horrible at math and I get math anxiety, so I can, it doesn't leave, it only gets worse. So,
Well,
to
and
get them
I-
out of that would be
I
great.
truly feel like we were making such strides in that, such strides with the math mindset and getting kids along with us, and I think, like, it just amplified the math anxiety. And then coming back to a face-to-face really made it difficult for them as well, just to kind of, there's a lot of transitions that year.
Right.
Felicia
Dr.
has-
Michelle?
I also want to mention the Boost program, the middle school Boost.
Oh, yes.
And the summer program that's kind of addressing some of
I'm sorry, you're saying blues?
that. Yeah,
Boost.
Sherry, Dr. Rose can talk about it.
Yeah, so we, at the middle school, Mr. McCurtain has the Boost program, which is an after-school program to help with students that are struggling in academics, and that's one way that we put supports in for math, ELA. And then we also have some of the ACE program at the high school as well for that. And then we also, this past summer, put in a summer academy, the Green Wave Academy, for the same reason. And our plan is to do that again for next year. We've also are putting a lot of professional development in. We're in the planning stages right now for math, particularly at the middle school going forward for minimum next 2.5 years.
And-
So we're really honing in on that.
Awesome. And I'm sorry, are you saying boost?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, I do have, so when you're talking about, in your personal recommendations, creating new curriculum, is that within the department, or is this something we're bringing from the outside, like a whole new curriculum that we're gonna be implementing?
Well, right now, we've got the Envisions
Yes.
2020, and we've got big ideas.
Yep.
But we're looking for more rigor, student engagement, and being able to differentiate. So we're going to explore different options,
Sure.
whether it's, program-based, district-based, but bringing in all the rigor and resources that best fit the needs of our students in Abington. Because these are Abington students. They're not, we're not in a different state, we're not in a different town.
Right.
So we really like to focus on.
So
our
hopefully
students.
maybe with an entire curriculum change, we'll start to find that our students find the fit that can,
That's the plan.
That's the
Okay.
plan.
That's the plan, and build that math capacity, the math mindset. And
Sure.
so that's what our focus is. And like I said, we had started this before the pandemic as well.
right.
And now we're really gonna focus on it going forward.
And
And I think the nice part about that is we're looking at it basically up through grade 8. So the transition between the 2 curriculums that we have now should be much smoother, or the 2 programs, I should say, because should be much smoother.
Well, and I do understand what you're saying too about that 7th grade. When you are an elementary style classroom teacher, you do have the ability to say, we don't get this right here, so let's put this aside and we're going to continue with this. And when you have a period that starts here and ends here and you have to throw the kids out the room, that is a difference. You don't always have the luxury of working your kids through it till they get it once you get to that 7th, 8th, and up. So I do understand that is particularly with math. Sometimes with language arts, you can work your way around things a little bit more easily. Math has right and wrong answers, very definitively so. So I do understand. But I also want to thank you, because it's really easy to stand at a podium when the picture is rosy. Not as easy to stand there when it's not. But the nice thing is there's a solid list of recommendations and a great place to go from here. So I'm my
It's a
own
little
kids sit
exciting.
firmly in this level, so I'm excited to see where you go from here. And I know that the teachers do work really
The middle
hard.
school teachers, all the teachers are amazing, but the middle school teachers are such hard workers and really just so dedicated. I mean, the high school teachers too, I don't want to take them away.
Well
They're
said, Heidi.
wonderful, they are. I'm living the life in terms of teachers, which is wonderful to be, place to be.
And can you just clarify one more time, I'm sorry, was it's the middle school that you're doing the new curriculum for, or elementary as well?
We're starting in the middle school.
Okay.
And we're going to see how that works and maybe expand on that.
Awesome. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so I took the 10th grade M class last year, and from the students, I feel like there was a lot of gaps. Like, I know, like, the first day was really difficult, and even this year with the curriculum, I think we're in algebra now, and he did algebra in 9th grade, and I think there's, like, a lot of gaps from, like, when we stopped going to school in 9th grade, and I was just wondering, so there's no curriculum changes in the high school?
So the curriculum, we actually are changing the curriculum in the high school over the next few years. But it's, what I would say right now is it's flexible. So what we did is during the first part of the pandemic in the spring when we went out, we had teachers list what the curriculum was that they had covered in each grade level so that the next teacher basically knew what was missing, and we mapped them to those power standards that the state put out. So the problem is now that we are now did the same thing for our following year. So we have a list of these gaps that we're getting to, but we don't necessarily want to go back and fill the gaps because we'll never get to what we are currently doing. So you guys are experiencing us saying, okay, let's go ahead and let's do quadratics, but you haven't really mastered linear yet. So then we kind of go back and review that. So I'm sure you experience a lot of that frustration going, oh, I feel like I should know this better. Does that, yeah, we're experiencing that too, trying to figure those things out as we go. When we meet at CPT, we have a lot of discussion about that, and we have a lot of common planning so that teachers have that chance to look back, but it's not 100% smooth. My apologies on that part. And I think if you looked at the item analysis from the high school, that's exactly what you'll see. We either covered it or didn't cover it. We were above the state or below the state, not really near the state. So,
Mrs.
great
Apple,
question.
to your point, that's, as Ms. Doherty was saying, we have a living, breathing document that would fill in what was covered, what wasn't, so that everybody has access to it and can see where some of those gaps might be.
Okay, thank you for that, because I feel that I know that you're a really good student, so, some other kids are definitely going to struggle so much more, if you're struggling, so. I don't know, yeah, hopefully we get back on track, and I'd love to see those numbers. Anyone else have questions? Oh, great job, thank you.
If you
Thank
do,
you.
please just forward them to me, because like I said, I'll be here next month.
All right, thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
I just want to say thank you to the department heads for coming today, and
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you all.
teachers
day.
and administrators for families for getting us through a tough year last year, so thank you.
Thank you for coming, we really appreciate it, thank you. And just one other thing, just because I always say it, MCAS are not mandatory for anything but 10th grade. If any parent does not want their child to take MCAS, you don't have to, just send in a refusal letter. There's many reasons, maybe your child's not ready, anxiety, stress. We want to get them ready for it, of course, but if it's just too much, it's not, you can opt out or refuse. So, not encouraging it, just letting you know there are options. Thanks. All right. Next, we have, for real, the report of the Director of Student Services, Dr. Robbins. He's going to talk about additional homeschool requests for the 2021-2022 school year.
Right, yep. And so not much of a report, just to say that we've had one family submit a request for homeschooling within the past 2 weeks. I reviewed the application thoroughly, and I've actually had multiple conversations with the family. I think their proposal does meet the state standards in terms of what needs to be taught, and it seems like a really sound proposal. And so based on my review, I'd recommend approval to the committee, but I turn it over to you to make the final decision.
Dr. Robbins, can I ask you one question? It doesn't have to do with this particular, it has to do with just in general. When they come to us at this stage of the game, have they been in school up until this point?
So it varies in this case, in this particular case, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, usually what would happen is that they will have trial schooling in one form or the other, and it just may not be going in the way that they had they had anticipated. So usually they will have explored a number of different options, be it virtual or or just sort of other types of schooling.
Okay.
And so when they come to this point, they're realizing that, oh, it's best for the family to just sort of take ownership of the
Okay.
of the program. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for the question.
Anyone else? So can I get a motion to approve the additional home education program for the 2021-2022 school year as recommended by Dr. Robbins?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The report of the superintendent of schools, the negotiations update with the Abington Education Association.
So I really have two brief items for you. One is just to let you know that representation from the committee has been provided. We've got Julie Groom and Chris with us, negotiating with both Unit A and Unit B. Unit A is our teachers, and Unit B is our educational support professionals, our paraprofessionals, our tutors, and our administrative assistants. We'll be using a coordinated bargaining format where the Unit A and the Unit B will be coordinated together with the association and our committee members. Our first negotiation date is the middle of February. I think it's Valentine's Day, if anybody's interested. We'll come back periodically, generally in executive session, with updates on how that progresses, but this is a year that all groups will be basically negotiating their contracts. So this is the start of that process.
Thank you for that info. Does anyone have questions?
Middle school assistant principal search. I think you're aware that we're going to be looking for a middle school assistant principal. In your packet, you've got a grid that outlines a multi-step process. We'll be advertising for the position the first week of January, establishing a screening committee the second week of January. That committee will be meeting to review the job description, develop a profile. We'll come up with questions in a candidate interview sheet. We'll also determine a final candidate list for interviewing that middle of January. Then we'll interview the candidates. The finalists will be sent in my direction. What I'll do is I'll take the information from the screening committee and I'll try to tease out more information. In terms of the candidates, we do a thorough background check, as much information as can be determined. We listen to the recommendation of the screening committee. I hope to bring a finalist to you the middle of February. That screening committee, the plan is for that screening committee to be made up of the middle school principal, 2 middle school staff members, 2 middle school parents, and a school committee member that you'll send my way, anyone that you want to send along. We've generally, or who might be interested in being a part of this process, we've generally, when it comes to the staff members and the school parents, we've started with the school council at the middle school or at our school buildings out of respect for the fact that they are democratically elected people by their constituents, by the parent groups, by the staff members. So we feel they should be, they're the people that do the school improvement plan and they meet periodically at the building. So we feel it's best to start with that group to get our members of the screening committee. If we don't find those people that are interested in being a part of the screening committee, then we reach outside of that group further to get other participants.
Great. And just an FYI, we do have an interim assistant principal. We don't have, it's not like we're going without. So we do have somebody, Mrs. Sullivan at this time, who was the wellness teacher for the elementary school. And do you want me to ask people now if they're interested? Just, I know I've done it before, and I've done it with Matt a couple of times, actually. I think he likes to meet around like 3, 4 o'clock. So I want to say more like 4, if I remember, that because I've been on it a couple of times with him in the past. So I don't know if anybody is interested and has that time to commit. It will go on, so first you'll meet with him and the rest of the board. You guys will talk, go through the applications, and then depending on how many people say that they want to come and interview and how many people are liked, then, you know, it could be, you could meet 2 people in a day, it could be possibly 3, or it could be spread out within a few days, but usually he likes to try to get it done within a couple of weeks.
Just a question, given, you know, kind of the hiring climate these days, do you think this timeline is realistic? 'Cause I mean, I work in HR, right, so I don't hire teachers or, you know, education administrators, but like, to me, I know for like a higher profile position where I work, like, to me, this would be a really aggressive timeline right now, given the climate. Do you think that this seems reasonable?
I would think that from what we've been seeing, historically, this is the time to hit
Okay.
the market. Because this is the time that people start thinking about what they're gonna do in the following school year, especially for administrative positions. So, you're maybe getting a little early to the pool at this point, but better a little early than a little late,
Yeah.
because if that search doesn't provide us anything, you know, I think where we're going with this, we could fall back, and this would fall back a month. We'd re-advertise.
I was gonna say, we're not, in the past, it's not beholden to that. You know, that's what we try to do, and, I mean, last year we did it, and we didn't find anybody.
Yeah.
Hence the interim
Yeah.
now, but like that, like, I'm just like looking, usually it's posted when it says can be posted, but the interviews can last beyond February
Yeah.
15th. Like, it can go beyond February 15th.
So if there aren't a list of candidates that are suitable to interview, or the interviews don't go well, I'll come back and I'll update you, and I'll start it all over again. Because this gives us until, you know, May, June
Yeah.
to re-kick the process. But
Wendy,
this-
I would be interested
Okay.
if nobody else is
No,
dying
yeah, I
for
think
the-
with
You're
the-
gonna have a lot.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'm good.
Heidi, we'd love to have you. Represent
Way to
us.
set my
Thank
feet
you.
on fire, yes.
Heidi's
Thank
your
you,
girl.
Heidi.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Anything else? That's it?
Yes,
Okay.
you have a question?
No, I don't think so. So next up, we have a report of the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Michelle.
Thank you. I have a few items for you tonight. The first item is the salary and expense allocations for the FY '22 school year, so the current school year. So what happens is, there's an allocation at town meeting that's an estimate of salary and expense. And then after we do the summer hire, we have summer resignations, summer hiring, and then I kind of balance the books, and here's what I believe will be the salary and expense allocations for FY '22. And then at the end of the fiscal year, if we need to, we come back and make an adjustment to that. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the salary and expense allocations as presented.
Any questions? Okay. Would anyone like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. This is probably one of the more exciting items that I have the honor of presenting to you tonight, and that is the Mass School Building Authority has officially closed out our middle high school building project. So a project that started many, many years ago as a vision came to fruition, and we've now are enjoying our 5th year in the new middle high school. And what happens with the MSBA is once you've completed the project and have completed all of your closeouts and spending, they hold back throughout the project 5% of the reimbursement to the town. So once everything's done, you go through a very robust audit process with MSBA. They do it for all of their projects. You have a copy of the audit report in your packet. And once that audit report is satisfactory, which it was right away, the MSBA officially closes out your project, which they did in the October MSBA board meeting, and return the last 5% reimbursement back to the town. I think it's also probably most exciting to celebrate the fact that the building was, as you know, completed 6 months early. Originally, the plan had been to do a mid-year move and move pre-K, middle, and high school into the new building over the winter, and we were able to finish the building 6 months early, and we were able to not spend $1.5 million of what was allocated for the project.
It's crazy.
So I just want to repeat that like super clearly. The project was completed 6 months early and $1.5 million under budget. So that money was not spent for the project.
So I couldn't begin to list the number of people that we need to thank in this community or professionals that helped us with this project to get us a good project. You know, we hit the market for this coming out of the Great Recession, where people wanted to work. We got good prices, we got the contractors we wanted that did quality work, we got the engineers and the architects that we wanted, the teams that we wanted to work with based on talking to our colleagues in other districts. And, you know, so I just, with great appreciation, I do not, you know, this will be a building that'll serve this town for decades to come. And this is just you have included at your chair a memo to the Board of Selectmen's office, just making sure they're aware that this has been closed out the way it's been closed out and then finalized. So. I didn't mean to jump on your thunder. I didn't mean to jump on your thunder. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. That's okay. It's an exciting, you know, like Peter said, to possibly thank everyone that needs to be thanked, including our student school committee, staff, community, town hall, our professional team.
Members of this community that, you know, just gave hour after hour after hour to make sure this got done for the community, so.
Right. I totally agree. I wanted to also thank Ellen, Mike, Kathy, and Paul, the school committee members that were a part of this, as well as Peter and Felicia. I know how hard and how much you've wanted this. And also the Abington, Rich Testa, and the Abington Building Committee. And I was lucky enough to be here at that time to actually officially break ground with a picture and a shovel, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and as someone who had 2 kids who did 7th grade in Folio and then were able to do 8th grade in a new building was just, I mean, such an improvement.
You know, we actually just partnered with the School Building Authority. They just started a new project, post-occupancy. So they come in after you've been in the building for a few years, and they came and toured the building for a day and spoke with staff, and they did surveys, and you know, they just I was able to walk around with them for much of the day, and you know, people are just in awe of the building, and the light and the how it's set up and how it's been kept, and our students, everyone comments on how great our kids are, and we feel very lucky. And
Well, and having that auditorium is a wonderful thing, and I hope everyone comes to see the musical, because the kids have worked hard.
so thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Felicia.
Felicia.
Thanks for everything you guys have done. I hope our kids enjoy it forever and keep it going. So, anything else?
Can I just ask a quick
Of
question?
course.
And I was going to ask Felicia, how's the field? How's the grass? I meant to ask that. That was my one closing out question. I know I think good on the tennis courts, but
Yep,
the
thank
field-
you. So this fall, we did do some more work on the southeast field, the one that you see when you first drive down Glen Oaks. It was scraped, it was re-leveled, it was new loom and hydroseeded and watered throughout the fall. And it has been monitored. Very happy with the growth that's coming in. It's anticipated that we'll wait at least one more growing season before it's used. So hopefully this fall for light use. We're still not 100% convinced that that'll be the right thing to do, but as we see the spring growth and the summer growth, hopefully we'll be able to use it for light use in the fall. If not, a year from the spring, it should be good to go.
And just to reiterate from comments on social media, we did not pay to redo that. That was the cost to fix that was on.
That was part of the building project.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So We have the the establishment of the next school committee meeting is Tuesday, January 4th at 7 p.m. There'll be a public hearing on the 2023 preliminary budget at 7:30. And Tuesday, January 25th, 2022 at 7 p.m. will be our regularly scheduled meeting. Peter, you have some informational items?
Just in your packet from our collaboratives, the quarterly report and the annual report, North River Collaborative and Reads. That's it.
Excellent. We do have some dates to remember, and that's Tuesday, December 14th is an in-service early release day for students. Tuesday, December 14th, Abington CAM will Abington CAM will rebroadcast, I guess I have trouble with that word, the inspirational speaker David Flood's presentation on Abington Cable at 6:30. Thursday, December 23rd through Friday, December 31st is the holiday vacation break. And Monday, January 17th is Martin Luther King Day, so all offices and buildings will be closed. Heidi, you said that, gave some information about,
ELF.
Yes.
ELF opens on Thursday. There are shows, ELF is the middle school, high school production this year. It is opening Thursday. The show's 7:30 on Thursday night, 7:30 on Friday night. There's a 2 p.m. matinee on Saturday, and the closing show is 7 p.m. on Saturday. Huge shout out to Mr. Shannon, Ms. Tomlin, Ms. Tara, who has come in from out to help the families, the kids, everyone. I think it's going to be fabulous. I haven't seen anything, but I'm hearing things from the elves who live in my household.
and how would someone get tickets?
You can buy tickets online, Showtix for You. I believe you can also still buy them at the door. Please don't ask me ticket prices right now. I cannot remember. But there will also be an area set up for light refreshments. If people want to buy little bottles of water and things like that, there will be opportunity there during intermissions. And I know we've had a lot of really great volunteers too. And so if you do have the time this week and this weekend, I would highly suggest you come out and support our students.
Excellent. Also just want to congratulate our high school football team for making it to the Super Bowl. We didn't win, but just getting there is an achievement in itself, so it's something to be proud of. And I do want to, yes, definitely, I do want to say thank you to a very nice parent that gave us some really great gingerbread cookies that were kind of phenomenal, so thank you for that. That was very nice of you. And other than that, do you have anything coming up for the, yeah.
Just meetings still in the works. I'm
Okay.
trying to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. I don't think there's anything
Okay.
major coming down the pipeline over the next month.
Awesome. So good to know. All right. So if there's nothing else, would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great night. Thank you for Abington PM for